Hey there, I am back with another deck review, and today we're going to be looking at Incantation from designers Mike Hoffman and Racknar Teyssir. This deck was released on Kickstarter and is inspired by 19th century spiritualism and some of the early pioneers of magic. Spiritualism encompassed a branch of magic where mediums would claim to be able to speak to the dead. They would have seances and things like that. Very interesting and atmospheric world that it conjures up as you think about that era. But the deck itself was designed to really be fitting for magic and gameplay above all else. So let's jump into it, find out how they did. All right, starting with the tuck case, it's just a regular glossy finish tuck case, no embossing or foiling, and it has this sort of vintage inspired feel to the whole thing. You've got the name of the deck, Incantation, and then you can see it's made for sleight of hand and games of chance. Kind of calls to mind some of that old style advertising where they would really prominently put what the item was for right in front of you, just very in your face advertising. I like the addition of that there. That's kind of written on these banners and extra little embellishments here. And then at the bottom, you have some of those tools of the trade from spiritual mediums, including the large crystal ball in the center with the eye glowing in the middle, and then the candlesticks. You can imagine those maybe lit around the medium just to create that really eerie atmosphere. And each of them, the flame has been replaced with one of the four suits. The bottom just says they're premium quality playing cards, but done in a primarily black and white look overall. On the sides, you have just the four suits and little circles there. Same thing on the other side. Bottom has your ad copy for Incantation playing cards, gives a nod to the designers, and mentions that these are printed by Cardamundi. And you can see it says first printing, so I'm not sure if there's going to be more printings to come of this, but this is from that first print. The top, it says Incantation with a couple of skulls on either side. And then the back gives you a look at the back design of the cards. We'll look at more at that in a second. As you open up the inner flap, nothing printed there, just some more black background, and then plain white interior to the tuck case. So not bad, fairly simple tuck case, but I like the sort of vintage feel to the whole thing. I think very fitting with the era that inspired the whole deck. So that is the tuck case. Now let's take a look at the back of the cards, and here it is, all done in black and white, so a full black card. Very nice. I like the dark feel that it evokes. I will say the only thing I wish is that that black edge had matched the white edge on the card faces. Definitely would have made it a little bit better for Magic, but I do like the color scheme on the back overall. The design is kind of sparse. You've got these sort of scroll work going all the way around, not as ornate and detailed as you'd see on some decks, even like a bicycle deck, but it gives it a much cleaner look overall. And then in the center, you have this large circle with the four suits represented and the two skulls forming that two-way back design. The skulls, of course, a nod again to those mediums who would speak to the dead. Finishes out in a white border around the edge and then that thin black poker border. So very nice feel to it. Despite the look and the use for Magic, it's not a marked deck or anything like that at all. So it is just a full two-way back design. So I like what's going on there. Very clean aesthetic to it overall, and still a very functional look to it. So there's your back design. Now you get into the extra cards, and here's the two Jokers, and these are probably my favorite cards in the whole deck. They're nearly identical, and they're a nod to a famous advertising poster for a magician from the turn of the century named Howard Thurston. He was a contemporary of Harry Houdini, so he worked around the same time. Very famous magician, but there's this poster of him that depicts him with a skull in his hands, and he's kind of staring down at the skull. And so that's what's recreated on the Joker here. You can see the skull has that big speech bubble where he's just saying Joker, and then you have Joker written in the four corners. And I say nearly identical on the two Jokers because if you turn to the other ones, you'll see the heads have been swapped. So now the skull is staring down at Howard Thurston's head instead. So very cool, kind of gives you maybe some opportunities for some color changes between the two. some kind of interesting little swaps that you could perform with this. So there's your 2 jokers. You also, it wouldn't be a magic suited deck without a couple of gaff cards, so you get a blank facer and a duplicate ace of spades. And speaking of the aces, here are those. So starting with the ace of spades, the most ornate of them, features the spade in the shape of a planchette. The planchette was basically the piece that would be used if you had a Ouija board. So if you've seen the Ouija board with all the letters across it, the planchette was the piece that everybody would put their hands on, and then through this hole in the center, the planchette would move on its own to different letters and spell out words, and you would see the individual letters through that hole in the center. So the planchette forms the inspiration for the spade shape here, has some very simple scroll work in it, and then the eye peeking its way through that hole in the center. And then you have the pretty standard Pippin index in the corner, or at least say familiar. It is a slightly custom spade pip. You'll see that a little bit more clearly as we get through the number cards, and then kind of a thinner font on the ace. And then you have in the other 2 corners, the value is written again, ace. So almost like a 4-corner index on these with that ace written in the corner. The other 3 aces are just a much simpler version of the ace of spades. Features a large pip in the center in either a classic red or classic black, and then the Pippin index in the corners, and then that ace written in the other side. So there's your 4 aces. Going into the number cards, they're definitely familiar and recognizable, very easy to read. You have the 2 hearts in the center, nothing too special there. Just like before, you have the indicators in all 4 corners, Pippin index in 2 corners, and then 2 written in the other 2 corners. But as you go through the number cards, you'll see some kind of custom orientations, like here on the 6, the way the pips are oriented gives it a very kind of interesting and unique feel without being crazy over the top and hard to use. So nicely done on those. And then as you go through the clubs and the other suits, more of the same. You'll see that slightly custom pip, but nothing that's really weird and unusable by any means. So definitely trying to keep it a very functional deck with all these number cards here. There's your diamonds and into your spades. So that's the number cards. And last but not least, let's get into the court cards, and here they are. Interesting selection on these to go with basically a modernized version of the French style courts here. So if you've seen a French style older deck, you'll vaguely recognize the style in these. They're definitely modernized and redrawn and done in nice bold colors. The red, that navy blue, and then that sort of metallic gold as an accent color. So there's your 3 heart courts. I like that the Suicidal King, he's stabbing himself in the stomach instead of the traditional behind the head on this one. There's your club courts. So a little bit darker scheme on the club courts. The red's toned down and the blue toned up a little bit compared to the red cards. There's those side by side. There are your diamond courts. The one small design knock that I have on these, they're 2-way courts, and the only thing I don't like is this black and white bar down the center. I think it really doesn't quite fit with the color scheme, and I wish they just more seamlessly blended those in. But they're nice courts nonetheless. And then there's your spade courts last of all. So that's your courts. Overall, not a bad deck. Definitely a nice, functional, easy to use deck. As far as handling, they're on the Cardamundi B9 slimline stock. Great stock, probably my favorite, and it has that linen finish on it. Very classic. I'm loving that guys are using this more. Just such a soft, easy on the hands stock. Fans beautifully, just shuffles really nicely right out of the box. So no complaints at all. I love the use of the B9 stock. So that is the deck. Now there is one other version of the deck that I'll show you real quick, and that's this one, the ritual version. It's mostly the same, but it does do some color changes. You'll see here the big one is this white. Some of the white's been replaced with this sort of pale blue color. Really interesting, very subtle. You see these side by side. It's a very light blue, but does add an interesting extra little pop on this one. And there you'll see the preview of the back design. As you open it up, This is where you'll see the difference a little bit more dramatically, and that's on the back design. So now that black and white has been replaced with black ink on that light blue color, that baby blue color. I really like this color. It's unique on playing cards. Definitely kind of does that great job of mixing that much more modern feeling color with the vintage feel of the rest of the deck. And as you go through the rest of the deck, in addition to having a little bit of a different Ace of Spades, it now has that blue banner wrapped around with the Ritual Edition written on it. Most of it's pretty much the same though. You'll see extra where the red's been replaced with some of that light blue. But otherwise, pretty much the same for the rest of the deck, including the court. So the blue kind of ends with those, the Ace of Spades and those Jokers are the only face cards that really get a change on this one. So that's the Ritual Edition of the deck. Same stock, same finish, same great handling. So overall, what is the deck good for? Well, they say they're going after a deck that's good for sleight of hand or games of chance, and I think they really fulfilled that. Great deck for gameplay, gives it an interesting extra feel, a little something different, while still being very functional, very easy to use and readable. As far as Magic, for the most part, I think it really fulfills on that promise. You get a couple of nice gaff cards, you get great Jokers for color changes, nice, easy to use, easy to read, and still familiar cards that aren't going to be overly suspicious. The only knock I would say is giving that back where the edges are a different color than the faces. Definitely knocks down on some of the tricks that you want to do. Now, you probably heard me say that before, but the types of tricks I'm talking about are like, there are some tricks where you'll want to have one card turned over in the deck and not have your audience know. But on these, almost immediately you can kind of pick out that one card because the edges are not going to line up. So that's what I mean when I say, not great for all Magic tricks. That said, still a deck that's definitely functional for Magic. So that's it. That is the look at the two versions of Incantation playing cards. Overall, not a bad deck at all. So go check out Incantation cards if you want to get one for yourself. I'll put a link down in the description where you can look at that. Actually, for the next few days, there's a really good sale going on. I think it's a buy one, get one free or something like that. So go check that out if you're interested in picking one up for yourself. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know what other deck reviews you want to see, and make sure to subscribe for more deck reviews and unboxings. Thanks, and I'll see you for the next one.